It's now official. Blaine Stewart will be a part of the West Virginia Mountaineer football staff. I'm here with my good friends Mountaineer Paul and Mr. Mike Asti from West Virginia Sports Now, and we're going to talk about it. What is going on, college sports fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Pull up a chair and let me serve you up a triple shot of top shelf college football content. You are going to be drunk from this content.
It's already empty.
Oh man, Mike's already got a head start. But anyway, guys, we'd love to have you. Thanks for joining us today. We're here with obviously my good friend Mountaineer Paul, who you all know. Find him over at Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. And you all probably know Mike Asti from West Virginia Sports Now. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing well, man. Yeah, as I said, I got a mid-afternoon snack here. It's actually this literally was lemon water, by the way.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I'm doing well.
How about you, Paul?
Yeah, I've got body armor.
I hear you.
But yeah, doing well, man. Just had a good time catching up with Mike before the show and everything.
Absolutely.
It was good.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Talk to you guys for sure.
One of the cool. I thought it would be really fascinating to bring Mike on because we all know Mike has covered the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he also covers West Virginia. So Mike has seen Blaine Stewart in action during his days at Pittsburgh, and he can give us a little bit more insight than what we've probably seen so far on Blaine and his time in Pittsburgh and how that may transition over to West Virginia. So, Mike, first question right out of the gate, man. Do you think, number one, were you surprised by the hire? I guess would be the best question to ask you.
Not really. Just because, so Blaine Stewart's been with the Steelers for about 4 years, started off as just an assistant kind of thrown on the staff, a little higher than an internship, I guess, per se, and then has been an assistant wide receivers coach the last couple of years. And the Steelers have had turnover at the wide receivers coach position with one passing away in the last few years as well before training camp. But I'd never thought that Blaine Stewart, with his resume, was going to get that job. So it doesn't surprise me since he's moving up the coaching ranks and he's well-liked around the Steelers. Mike Tomlin does have a connection with WVU from Bill Stewart. So that maybe is part of how Mike Tomlin opened up the doors to Blaine. Bill Stewart and Mike Tomlin were very close way back. And this is now a better opportunity for it being a position. He ends up being tight ends coach. That wasn't initially reported, but that now is the official title for Blaine Stewart. So people may think you're leaving an NFL team, you're leaving the Steelers from an assistant job to go to a college program, unless you're going to a head coach position or a coordinator position. Is that what you want to do? Does that seem like a better move? But to go from an assistant to an actual position coach where you're leading a segment of the team, it is a jump up position. And with his age, it's still a good opportunity. So I wasn't really blown away in terms of surprise. I thought eventually he would work his way up to something. You can make an argument that a more normal progression for a guy that's starting as some type of assistant, kind of thrown on NFL staff and getting mentored by a lot of other coaches, almost like an elongated internship in a way while you're obviously getting paid at the pro level. They then maybe would become a coordinator or a position coach to a lower level college program. I mean, let's be honest here. It is possible that he is going from that to a tight ends coach with WVU from the Steelers, partly because with the help of his father and his relationship with WVU. WVU is it's a major conference program. It's the 15th winning. It's obviously down right now, but it's an historically successful program, major conference, Big 12 program. So that is a really solid opportunity. I mean, now he does well here in this role for a few years. A coordinator job is not too ridiculous at a lower level school, if not more. Who knows? So generally, you would probably go from what he was doing with the Steelers to, say, an assistant role of some positioning with maybe a group of 5 team. You might not have to go to the FCS level because you are going from the NFL, but maybe a group of 5 team. Instead, he's going right to Power 5, and that, I'm sure, is partly because of the connection with
Yeah.
his father. But hey, his father built the resume, so his father, I'm sure, doesn't mind him benefiting from it in some way. And he also did a lot of work with the Steelers. He wasn't just coasting because he's Bill Stewart. So he did a lot of work there and came very recommended from the Steelers to WU. And obviously people also maybe to get this too on some maybe behind the curtain information. Everyone knows Tomlin and Bill Stewart's connection, but because of that connection, and even a little bit before, since Mike Tomlin's been the coach because of the Bill Stewart connection, even though Pitt shares a facility and Pitt is the Pittsburgh college team, even though West Virginia is in the media market, there is a good relationship between the Steelers and WVU. So Neal Brown, Tomlin, they know each other. They have a working relationship, if not a personal relationship. Tomlin certainly did with Bill Stewart. So it is not crazy to help out somebody who has a WVU connection for the Steelers to do that, or vice versa. They're working together. It's not like the Steelers hate WVU because they're sharing a facility with Pitt.
Right. I get that. Okay. Well, and I've always noticed, I mean, Mike Tomlin has always he's drafted a lot of West Virginia players over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not as much recently, but yeah, for sure.
No. But I mean, earlier on in his tenure, he did. Yeah. A lot of guys that other teams may not have drafted, he's drafted.
Yeah. I mean, they drafted Kenny Pickett because they believed he was the most NFL ready quarterback. If Kenny Pickett was sharing a facility with them and went to WVU, he would have taken him too. Like he did what he said recently is true, that he got a year-long, if not more than that, actually. Kenny Pickett was at Pitt for 5 years, but he got a 5-year period. And really that last year at Pitt, when he got to that Heisman level, kind of bird's eye view of what Kenny Pickett was doing. So you see the guy every day. You're obviously going to be a little biased, and you're going to be able to have more of an interest in somebody and really see what they're doing, good or bad. But I don't believe, and some Pitt fans will keep clinging on, well, they just love it being a Pitt player because they're a Pittsburgh team. That's not really what it is. He saw him, he scouted him, he's able to see how good he was in his eyes. He had the first round grade. He fell in their lap. I don't think they expected him to be there, and that's the whole reason why they brought in Trubisky originally. And then once he was there, they couldn't resist. They thought Willis was more of a project and Pickett was more NFL ready now, and it didn't matter where Pickett went to school. That's really the case. So that's the same thing with Addison, who people are talking about for this coming year's draft.
Did the Steelers and Pitt ever practice at the same time or anything?
You mean like on the field together?
Well, not together, but like, I guess where I'm going with it is it possible that Blaine Stewart has seen a lot of Pitt practices?
It's possible he could have seen some Pitt practices, but I can't speak on like together. Like they wouldn't have practiced together.
I asked the question the wrong way, but
because like if there's like a rain out and the Steelers got to go inside, then there would obviously be rain for Pitt as well. They're in the same city, so like they couldn't.
Well, I don't know that much about the facility.
They try to schedule it different, so like you're not interrupting each other's press conferences, practices, things like that. But I will say, even if you see the picture of going into the UPMC facility on the south side, there's one door that has the Steelers logo that you're supposed to go through there with that security for Steelers. There's another door for Pitt. You go through there. You can certainly see each other in the hallway. You can certainly see each other in a cafeteria, but you're not supposed to be necessarily eating together. Okay. But you can build relationships. I mean, it's no different than, and it's not sharing a facility, but there are a lot of players over the many, many years with, and if you watch old documentaries, a lot of players with Miami, with the U, back when the U was the U, they always joke around that, hey, I had to help the NFL. I had to help the NFL Miami Dolphins get in nightclubs. And I mentored them because I was better than them when they would see me around. So like you do have that relationship when you're a city team and you're a city school, and they're sharing a facility, but it's not, I mean, maybe he could scout them in a way. I'm sure he probably has some information.
That's where I'm going. Because I got to play again next year.
Right. And that's true. I mean, I'm sure they're going to go to him, and I'm sure there might have been something there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Not quite Kirk Soraka, but it's good.
Yeah. Maybe something he learned from Pickett that Pickett dropped is, hey, this is what we used to do. Although, I guess for the scouting of that game, what Pitt's doing is kind of night and day from what they were doing with Pickett now. But I mean, he probably is around in a way. I wonder if he ever wore WU gear, because I did a couple of times get some comments when I would.
I've heard that doesn't sit real with Pat Narduzzi when that happens. But anyway,
No. I have a colleague. He's actually put this out there. So Wes Euler, he put this out there publicly. But yeah, he got yelled at one time.
Yeah, I heard about
apparently I saw him get told to take it off, and actually I had something happen to me as well a week earlier of being told to take a pullover off. I didn't know it was from Narduzzi. Maybe it was also, but Wes really apparently feels that it was from Narduzzi, and he heard Narduzzi yelling about it or something.
Yeah,
Wes
was giving him hell over it too, man.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a little right.
Yeah, it's a little bit childish. But anyway,
yeah.
Paul, did you have a question?
What if Tomlin wore one? What would Narduzzi do then?
Well,
nothing.
He might not
He wouldn't do nothing. He would shut up.
You would think so, although I would agree. Although knowing Narduzzi a little bit, and I'd never covered Pitt directly, just been in Pittsburgh media, so been around it and talked about Pitt, etc. Narduzzi is, especially after an ACC title, I mean, he has some arrogance to him. I don't know.
He's a doozy.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
He almost might be. He wouldn't make as much of a mockery as if it's Wes or myself, but like I feel like he might tell somebody else to go. Hey, goes. I don't know. I wouldn't put anything past him.
He probably knows. He probably knows Tomlin well enough. He'll go up to him like, "Look, dude, what are you doing?"
Yeah, like I wouldn't be blown away if you hear anything like that. But you would think. I mean, obviously talking clout in the city. Obviously, even though they're both polarizing in a way, Tomlin certainly trumps out Narduzzi.
It's probably either Tomlin or Big Ben. It's like 1 and 2, right? But back to my question is: have you had a chance to talk with Blaine Stewart yet? At all?
Just sidebars like at training camp and things like that. Like he never was at a position that was garnering him sitting there and conducting a press conference or having a media session or any emails saying, media, do you want to speak to Blaine Stewart? Like it wasn't like he was a coordinator or.
Well, I mean, since he got the job at West Virginia.
Oh, since then I've not spoken to him. No.
Okay.
I've not talked to him since then. What I did actually find interesting about, and Jerry Dulac of the Post-Gazette is the one who broke the story. If you saw, and I'll admit this, I saw it there, and I know a lot of other West Virginia media saw it there. The breaking, which I'm exaggerating with quotes because he broke it. Like he was the first media member of West Virginia or Pittsburgh to put it out there publicly. But if you guys notice, he didn't put it out there publicly to say, breaking news, Blaine Stewart's leaving the Steelers to get a job at WVU. It was way down at the bottom, basically buried in an article about them retaining Matt Canada.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like I missed it the first time. I saw that. That was the coverage that we were looking for. Like that was the big news in Pittsburgh. That was it. I was done. Then I saw a colleague's tweet and I was like, where is he getting this from? Because and then I'm looking around, I go back and I'm like, man, like way down there. So like, obviously that wasn't the major news for Jerry Dulac and the Steelers. That's not a major news deal for them. Just looking at our back end of our engagement from our Steelers site to the West Virginia coverage of Blaine is blowing up. Steelers is kind of a blip on the radar. So it's not a big loss for the Steelers. I don't think Steeler fans that don't care about West Virginia care. It's probably not even something that they're looking for. That's why it was down there. It's not a criticism of Jerry. But that was where I had to go for it. That was where it was. But no, I've not spoken to him and got any comments from him. I'd imagine he might be available to us soon because usually that does happen. The issue is the day we're recording this is when WVU officially put it out. So that email might come to me tomorrow or Monday or something like that.
Right.
They didn't break this news. It was out there by all of us prior to them sending an email.
Yep.
Because a lot of times they'll send an email and then somebody in media will be rushing to get it out there publicly. But like that's what happens with players that are signing that are transfers. We all get an email, this player signed, and generally it's within seconds before somebody's tweet is up there, but it's like, fire fingers on who can get up there first, because that is the player allowing the program to try to break that news. Like in order to break that news, you'd have to really know a close source. And there are people that do this. I mean, we've done it before, but not with West Virginia, with the family or with the player, or maybe they want you to. But
right.
especially for somebody who's working for them. So this was not broken by the university. So they're not going to speak on it or allow anyone to speak on it before they put it out there.
Right.
And it almost
Makes
feels
sense.
like they did today because they just had to now it was out there.
Yep.
The only thing that it was more news from today that wasn't there before is Jerry just said he was getting hired. Like he didn't say the position. So him being a tight ends coach was a separate piece of news.
Correct. Which I saw last night.
Yeah. And I assumed it would be.
Yeah.
I think most of us assumed that's what he.
That was an assumption. Yeah, just wasn't.
Yeah, but
right.
but you never know because those coaching staffs they can move people around and do different things with them.
Yeah.
So for them to make it official,
as we talked off the record, I mean, tight ends coach. If I was going to guess, I would have guessed tight ends coach because obviously they're not going to make him a wide receivers coach. They just hired one. If he was brought on as an assistant wide receivers coach, which he just did with the Steelers, you could argue that's not a better move to do that with a pro team versus doing it with a college team.
That's not a better move.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a better move. And then you're in a situation where you're so low on the totem pole with a coach who is in evaluation year versus Mike Tomlin, who's the Steelers are never going to fire Mike Tomlin, even if some fans want him to. So like job security wise for the same job, that wouldn't have made any sense at all. So it would have to be for a better position that would advance his career, even if Neal Brown is gone and say he is fired in a year because Brown's gone. By having a year as a tight ends coach versus an assistant to somebody else would help him get another job or maybe be retained by WVU. But the only thing, as I said to Couz off there, is it would have been tight end coach for me if I had to guess, because you're not gonna give him quarterbacks coach when he's never had an experience doing that. His father, that was a weakness that some critics that was not going to make sense. But maybe I could have seen running backs just because you're promoting Chad Scott to OC. He's still going to be obviously leading the running backs, but that's a lot on his plate. I could have seen them bringing in somebody to take some of that off his plate to help him there. Maybe they didn't want to give him that title. But I could have seen that. And also he did do a lot of work, obviously with receivers, but that included Najee Harris and some of the running backs with the Steelers, included tight ends as well, just because if they're involved in, when you're a receivers coach, if anyone's involved in the passing game to catch a pass, they're considered you're a receiver. Like you don't have to actually be a WR in the depth chart. So Najee Harris, running backs, tight ends, Pat Fryermuth, he was involved with, who's become obviously a solid pass catching tight end. So I would imagine with like Cole Taylor and having a stud like that who has that ability.
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say.
The numbers aren't really there because he didn't get tons of opportunities at LSU. He should be getting a lot more at WVU. He should help him. That would make sense. But in terms of hierarchy of coaches, I could maybe see they're thinking of, okay, running backs coach is probably higher than tight ends coach for us. Certainly receivers coach is above tight ends coach. So we're going to give him a position coaching spot that is basically the lowest one we can give on the offense. It is probably what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's open.
Sense. Well, and based on his experience or lack thereof, I think it makes sense, honestly.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
you don't want to give him a high up position just because he's Bill Stewart's son. I mean,
no, it's a reasonable enough position that I don't think people are screaming nepotism. But it is to go to a major program. That isn't always common. Some have to go climb higher. Although, unless you're a former player, like unless you're Dermar Johnson, I mean, he didn't have tons of a coaching experience. But when you have that playing experience and you have a connection with the coach, that's different.
That trumps, in my opinion. In a lot of situations, will trump.
That's a different type of. That's a different type of scenario. Yeah,
I was actually surprised when I did a episode on it, and I've seen other people do. And I thought there would be a lot of fans come out and say this is a terrible hire. He doesn't have enough experience, and there's been a few, but it has surprisingly been extremely positive. At least the feedback I've gotten.
Yeah,
people love this hire. A lot of it is because everybody even the people who didn't think Bill Stewart was a great coach, everybody loved him as a man, at least that I know of.
Yeah.
And as a leader and for the 100%. Way he motivated and his love for the state and the university. Yeah. So because of that, a lot of people just love it for that. But I even think the fact that he's coached in the NFL under Mike Tomlin, a lot of people are looking at that as a positive. He's learned from one of the greatest coaches out there.
Yeah.
And worked with some of the greatest players out there. So I've actually been surprised by the positive feedback that I've seen on this. Have you seen the same thing in your on your social media accounts and through your interactions?
I would weirdly say that out of any piece of news coming from the W football program in the past 3 years, really, like almost ever since the Liberty Bowl win to now. So not exactly when Neal Brown was there, but from that winning season, from the Liberty Bowl win to now, and it's not been good. This might be the best received unanimously piece of news in that 3-year chunk. Yeah, I've maybe seen one or two people, but it's actually so positive that I saw Pac-Man Jones, Noel Devine, a lot of former players are getting out there speaking about this. Even some that don't really continuously speak about WVU for whatever reason, they're happy about this. And it's not like Blaine Stewart was a great Mountaineer player. This is a guy, he played at JMU, but this is a guy that obviously has the blood and has the lineage of Bill Stewart. And as you said, I do think one thing for Bill Stewart, because I'll even say, like, I was a student then, and when you have a legend of the team and program say, you should hire this guy. Like I had a show with Rashid, and he literally told me when I'm asking him, well, do you ever get asked, or do you feel like you ever have any say so? The whole conversation of former players and greats and what their input is. And he said, he told me what input he's had, and, he's told me what they've asked him over the years, but he did say that the only player who has ever, at any level that he's experienced in his life, directly basically call a shot on who should be hired is Pat White with Bill Stewart. So it was hard for them to say no at that time. And they also wanted continuity. They didn't want to go crazy and bring an outsider in then because of just the drama that was going on.
Right.
So I get all that then. But I remember as a student at the time, and Bill Stewart, absolutely a fantastic man, a great man. I hate even, criticizing it all right now for somebody who's passed away. But I remember being a student thinking, this doesn't have the cachet. I mean, the program's vying for national championships here. I mean, at the time, Rich Rodriguez is building a resume that could get him in the Hall of Fame someday. Obviously, that career has dissipated. But Bill Stewart, a career assistant, like VMI, like it didn't give you the pizzazz that you would want in a guy getting hired. Like, for example, if the guy with Bill Stewart's resume got hired at WVU right now without any connections, let's be honest, the fan base would probably not be thrilled. They would look at that resume prior to West Virginia, say VMI, assistant, special teams. I'm not impressed. So that's kind of what the vibe was then. They had those 9-win seasons, like the 3 years, they're winning 9 games, but it's a dip of what it was. So it's not fair to him, but he's getting compared to Rich Rodriguez and their top 10 rankings every year. That's not what he put out there. Getting in a New Year's Day bowl doesn't give you the same excitement if it's not at the time a BCS bowl, because that was what Rich Rod was doing. So that was that then. But since Bill Stewart has passed away and many, many years have since gone, it's all now about leave no doubt. It's played at every game whenever they have a chance. And it does feel like that even the Starches critics at that point, it's just all love to Bill Stewart. Because he was just such a great guy. It wasn't like it was horrendous, even if it wasn't Rich Rod. He had a lot to deal with. He was basically a therapist to the team more than even a coach. He was a great motivator, whatever. There's no reason to worry about that now. So that's all turned the corner to unanimous love. And then Blaine, obviously, everyone just loves. I mean, he was a young kid around so many great players. They saw him grow up. They probably think of him almost like as a little brother, or some of them like Rashid, and they probably think of him as like a son. I mean, that's the difference of age. Not to age anybody out there, but like Blaine was a little kid at the time. He wasn't good enough to be a great. He'll say this: he wasn't good enough to be a great all-time Mountaineer. So he had to go a smaller school route to get on the field, but that was best for him. He wasn't good enough to go beyond that. And then he wanted to get into coaching. And doors are going to get open to you when you have a father in coaching. And Bill Stewart also was beloved. He beloved by Mike Tomlin. Everybody as a person loved Bill Stewart, regardless of what you think of him getting a job because of Pat White's comments. So now it's all about love to Bill Stewart. That's why there's excitement there. That's why our connection there. And honestly, even personally, I mean, my father actually passed away in my life around the same time of the age that I was, that Blaine was at that point. So I kind of understand what Blaine went through, and him holding his father as a godlike figure, because you're gonna feel that way about your dad, whether they were a coach that won every game, lost every game, whether they were a coach at all, or no matter what they did as a profession. So, I'm sure Bill's smiling down at Blaine. It's a great thing. I think it's really cool. It is a great thing for the university. There's no way in the world this could hurt. I don't see how this could
I don't
hurt
see
in
it
a
either.
way.
I don't see it either.
Blaine's not going to ruin a game by how he's coaching some tight ends here. And fortunately, he has a stud coming in who has some talent that actually could make him look good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really excited about Cole Taylor.
I am too. And
I think it's one of the more underrated transfer additions in all of college football, to be honest with you.
And even
this tape.
Yeah. That's all right. And even his even like you said, even though he's coached, he's worked with tight ends.
Right.
Even though he wasn't a quote unquote tight ends coach. Yeah. He's been around the game long enough. He knows what a tight end's supposed to do.
Right.
I'm sure he's seen the Steelers tight end coaches or whatever they are.
Yeah.
Whatever they're labeled there, work with them. I mean, he's learned from some of the best out there.
Yeah, I mean, he had Pat Frymuth. You could argue that, like, I love that draft pick at the time. Like, you could argue Pat Frymuth was going to be a stud anyway. Yeah, no, he's done it. Yeah, if I would say this, like, if Blaine Stewart was coming out of college, that's it. Just graduating college, or even having been a GA, and that's it. A year as a GA, which is like an internship that anyone who ever coaches got to kind of go through that door. And then all of a sudden, he's a position coach, not even assistant, but a position coach at WVU. That would feel like either we're trying to get some positive PR that we're not getting enough of, because that's also helping them right now.
It is.
Or there's a little nepotism involved there. But like even Neal Brown, who obviously didn't know Bill Stewart, he knows of Bill Stewart. He knows of the legacy there. He hears stories. He knows how important Bill Stewart's legacy is at WVU. Neal Brown, he could have made this decision a year ago. Like, I'm going to take them at their word and the benefit of the doubt that they didn't want to make this decision and do this until they felt Blaine was ready. Right. I mean, Blaine had to go 2 years as assistant to a position at the theater, not just one. So, like, he was there several years. So he had multiple years before he even got that opportunity. The Steelers made him go 2 years prior to giving him even a named real role outside just assistant coach. Right. So he's had to put in work. Doors get open when you have connections. I mean, I don't have a last name that's famous anywhere, outside of different, not in sports at least. Right. But I mean, I have had connections and friendships and things like that have opened up doors for me, and that's happening here with Blaine Stewart. But he's had to work his way up to garner the opportunity, because it is a major program he's joining. This is not even JMU that he maybe has a connection at as well.
Right. Yeah, and you don't, Neal Brown's in his. There's two ways you could look at this. Number one, you could say, okay, Neal Brown's in he's coaching for his job, potentially his last year. So he's not going to go out and hire somebody he doesn't think can do the job. Right. But there's the other side of the argument that I've heard as well that says, but because he's possibly in his last year and he's considered by some to be a quote unquote lame duck, he's not going to be able to get anybody like that anyway.
Right.
He's not going to be able to get the superstar coach. So
well, that was every single time a coach like Graham Harrell or Tony Washington, every time they left, the conversation always got brought up. Well, they're leaving because even if it's a lateral move that some could argue, like going from WVU to Purdue, that it's partly because of job security. That you're concerned that if a head coach is fired, usually you figure that the new guy's going to clean house. So that's an argument that gets brought up. And then also certainly when Bilal Marshall was hired, or you hear those names, the rumors of the Trickett brothers both turning down the offensive, which I definitely heard as true, both turning down the OC role, that's going to give credence to that fire, that if Neal Brown was coming off the Liberty Bowl win, or this was a better situation that they're locked in for several years, or this was in the middle of obviously the Rich Rod era, in the middle of it where you're building a consistent contender who's a national power, then everyone would flood in, especially if you have a tie to the program. No one with a tie to the program like Clint Trickett would say no. And you could make an argument talking about Blaine and going to a major conference program. I mean, being at Coastal's cool. It's a good job when you're a coordinator. It's not like he's an assistant or something like that. He is really the number 2 guy there. But to have, it's not like they were at, the rumor wasn't, and they weren't asking him to go down to an assistant role. He would have had the same job at a bigger time program. That would have been a promotion, you would think, in coaching ranks. To say, no, I'm just not going to get myself promoted in my profession and just kind of hold water. Yeah, your team is probably going to have a similar year. You're going to win with a lesser schedule again. So it's going to build up your resume again. And maybe he'll think a better opportunity is there next year, or he can just stay there because of job security. But that does make you wonder. I mean, that does kind of make you wonder. And let's be honest, too. You can debate all day about keeping Brown or not keeping Brown. And, I said that Brown was on the hot seat and I wouldn't have kept him, but I understood maybe why they did eventually. That the other end of it also is that, Ren Baker, he came on my show and said this. I mean, he's not shying away from making it very clear that, yes, I am all in with Neal Brown now because he is my head coach. I've talked to him, like him. We're going to try to make this work, but he is in a year-long evaluation process. I mean, Ren Baker admitted to me on the air, it wasn't even private, that, yeah, I'm evaluating him over the next year, and then we're going to go discuss it again. So, I'm not saying they're listening to my show, but they're hearing that, they're aware of that. The other coaches are certainly going to, they're on Twitter. Clint is really active on Twitter. He might see a tweet. So that's going to maybe shy people away. And yeah, maybe it's a safer hire that Neal Brown knows this is a good job for Blaine. It's going to be positive PR. Blaine's not going to rock the boat. Blaine's not going to be throwing anyone under the bus, and Blaine's not going to be looking to leave in the middle of the season or anything like that. He's going to be happy to be here. Maybe they'll keep Blaine even if I'm gone because of the connection there with Bill Stewart. He wouldn't feel as bad as hurting Blaine's family. All of that might have come into play. I mean, there might even be a sense for WVU to take care of Blaine if they do move on from Neal that they wouldn't have had for Graham Harrell as just a complete outsider.
Right.
So that I mean, I was semi-surprised by the Graham Harrell news just for the fact that he was going to Purdue mostly. Right. I mean, they won a division, but they weren't that good. They once the division format's out of the Big Ten, they're not getting in that title game again. But yeah, I mean, that's a legitimate thing to think, but I think it's still an earned opportunity for Blaine Stewart. And at the end of the day, regardless of how you get here, if you're comparing Tony Washington and Bilal Marshall's resumes, I mean, it's really similar. You know what I mean?
Not much difference. Yeah. Not
right.
a huge difference.
So
like 2 years, maybe 2 more years experience, maybe.
And you could argue about, playing career and things like that Paul was talking about,
right.
That maybe if somebody did more as a player, you kind of bump them and give, somebody coached a couple more years, but he was a better player. So that's kind of a difference. And as much as I advocated for Ryan Switzer and even obviously everyone wants Stedman Bailey, their combined coaching experience doesn't even come close to either one of those guys. So they actually hired a guy with experience who also has played. And it is a similar resume, if not better, than Tony Washington. I mean, obviously, I do know some recruits, though. I'm surprised they haven't bumped West Virginia out of their top 10 and out of top 5s. I'm waiting for some of those tweets because weirdly, which I'll say is, I'll give you not breaking news, but some news that I just learned. There's a 4-star receiver recruit that had West Virginia in his top 10 as recent as a week before the Tony Washington news that I ended up breaking the news to because he didn't even know. I'm in the middle of interviewing him, and his answer is, I'm really loving WVU because of Tony Washington. I had to basically tell him, well, I don't know. I might need another answer because that's not going to be a good reason right now. Right. This is Alex Taylor, by the way. And I've asked him, and he's told me that WVU, he's not heard from West Virginia, and he's not heard from Bilal Marshall since the hiring. He's not moved West Virginia out of his top 10, but he admitted to me that after Tony Washington was gone, that could drastically hurt West Virginia's chances. Yeah, was his wording, but he's not moved him out. But he hasn't heard from them. They haven't contacted him. I would assume that Bilal's first order of business would be to contact the 4-star recruits that Tony Washington was kind of doing well with. I mean, he had other things to worry about.
Move away
in the off season. Yeah, but I mean, obviously he's big into recruiting too. He was brought in. I know you touched on this, Couz. Big into Florida, big into the Florida recruiting zone. So if you're not a Florida player, maybe he doesn't have as much time for you because West Virginia's doing a lot in Florida. more than they even were doing prior to him coming in already. They're sending a lot of Florida offers.
Yeah.
This could be all about Bilal Marshall. So I don't know what the thinking is, but that was kind of surprising to me. There hasn't even been communication at all to a 4-star that was publicly in with Tony Washington, because I almost want to ask the kid, like, when are you going to drop them out? Because, like, why would you go to WVU now?
Yeah, it is interesting. Very interesting.
Since we've been on here, I got a response from Monty Montgomery. I can't wait to see what he said to me.
Okay.
He's on campus right now.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
And explain to everybody who that is.
He is a transfer from Louisville, graduate transfer, I believe. He's
linebacker,
a fourth
right?
or fifth year guy.
Yeah.
Linebacker, 160 career tackles, 15 career sacks.
Cool.
Huge prospect. So
Awesome.
Hopefully this is where I make my hay, with them guys, because I can't really get a hold of the actual players due to the difficulties. It's hard for me to get through to them. But the transfers I can get a hold of, it seems.
Yeah. Before they sign.
Before they sign, then it goes completely quiet.
Well, it's harder. I was able to get Hawkins after he signed, but it would be harder for you guys for sure.
Yeah, for me, not for you.
Yeah.
Not for you.
It's all good.
But you put in a lot of work to get where you're at. I understand that. There's no bitterness on my end at all.
So at the end of the day, Mike, or first, Paul, you got any questions you want to ask Mike? I don't leave you out, man.
I think we've touched on pretty much everything, really.
Okay. Mike, real quick, man, I've got your Twitter handle scrolling at the bottom of the screen, but just let everybody know where they can find you and find your work.
Sure. Yeah. At Mike Asti 11 there at the bottom of the screen, MikeASTI 11, and then WV SportsNow. So WVSportsNow.com, any of our channels throughout our network. You can also find me throughout, different places in Pittsburgh media as well. It's all there at my Twitter handle. Even what I do with the Believe Network and my podcast there at Mike Drop. So Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. Search for myself. You can find me all over there, as well as, do a Google search. You'll find me at other places as well, whether they're covering the Mountaineers, they're not covering the Mountaineers. But for Mountaineer fans, WV Sports Now and at Mike Asti 11 for my Twitter handle.
All right, Paul, what about you, man?
You can find me at Paul Mountaineer on Twitter, and also at Hoops from the Hills, which is a partnership between Couz and myself, and also at Mountaineer Paul Talks Football.
Awesome. Yeah, go check out both of these guys. Check out their content and their work. Both do good stuff out there, I should say. But Mike, I thank you for coming on the show, man.
Absolutely.
It's always a pleasure to have you on. The last time I had you on, my audience really enjoyed it. Actually had one guy tell me it was the best show I'd ever had. So thank you.
All right. I will not let my ego get too crazy then, if that is the case. I'm sure that's not accurate. I'm sure you've
he loved he really liked the way he liked the chemistry and the way we conversate. And of course, you always bring a different view than I can get, because I'm not in the media and I'm not as close to the program as you are. So it's always cool to get that perspective, man. And so I do appreciate that. And Paul, obviously, I appreciate you joining me too, man. Even though I know you've had a really busy day today and had a lot going on. So thanks for hopping on with us.
No problem.
Yeah, nice talking to you guys.
Yep. Y'all, everybody have a good day, and we're out. Q Country Roads.
Taking